in the Constitution, I will probably inform the cabinet, or I will actually warn them, and that is the inherent right of the president or the head of state. And I honestly cannot say that I'm going to disagree with you openly. I think as a president I shouldn't do that, because sometimes we posture ourselves too strongly. Then there will be a confrontation developed between the president and the government. I think this is not the position we want. I think honestly we want to work mutually. Although I took offense very strongly to Shanmugam's remarks about that the Prime Minister will talk to the President depending on the level of respect that he gives to the President. That I took very strong offense. That's why I wrote a letter to the press, because both the President is elected, the Prime Minister is elected. We all have been supported by Singaporeans. Therefore, the respect must be mutual. But having said that, I still feel that I don't want to develop a confrontation attitude with the government, because at the end of the day, the most important thing is the interest of this country, the interest of the people of Singapore. And I think we've got to start at the right note. So that's the reason why I was very angry with Shanmugam, because he started the stage of he set the stage for confrontation, which is not good for the country.
Well, I think the Constitution is very clear. The responsibility and the power to run the country is with the government. The President has very limited powers under the Constitution, except in the case of custody of our reserves and protecting the integrity of our public service, and certain limited areas like detentions and sentences. Now, having said that, the President, by virtue of his office and his prestige, in my view, has influence. He can exercise his influence through his example, through the causes which he champions, through his encouragement of issues like encouraging welfare, sports, culture. He can help to mold and bind our society together. So it's not true to say that the President has no power at all. He has, in a sense, moral power, which depends on how he conducts himself, and I think that's very important. Of course, one can imagine different types of roles for the President, increased powers, but that would require an amendment to the Constitution. Amendments to the Constitution can only be done by Parliament, and presidential elections is not the right forum to debate amendments to the Constitution. People must run for the office of the President that exists, not for the office which they may want to have. And people who want to change the Constitution to alter the powers of the President should run in the next general elections, not in the presidential elections.
I would like to give a reply to that point. Now, I agree with Tony about some of the causes that the President can champion, but I think the one that touches the heart of most Singaporeans is how is my life? Is my life easy or difficult? And we know that Singaporeans have to struggle. They give their views in the general election, but not so well reflected in the Parliament. And I think these issues still continue to be very important. And I want to be able to bring attention to these issues, that we need to change the situation in Singapore so that people can have look forward to a life that is better. I'm old enough to know what life was like 20 years ago. Low cost of public housing, wages were adequate, and people could have more time and they could have bigger families, children getting married. Today, life is quite difficult. We are seeing that in the declining birth rate, And I think those issues are also important. I don't think we are going to wait for another 5 years for another general election. It's going to take too long. So I hope that the president can play that role. And in that respect, I would disagree with Tony about what can be done.
I disagree with him.
Sorry?
I don't agree with him. Okay.
Please speak up.
Because he's involving day-to-day politics, which is not within the Constitution. I think we must be very, very clear. As I said, this is not a general election.
So what do you see is the greatest danger if Tan Kin Lian's views
I think
prevail?
what he's doing is bringing local day-to-day politics into the presidency. That should be the role of those who have been elected, like those in the opposition, those in the PAP in parliament. They should be bringing out those issues. As a president, I have to make sure that the decisions, for example, on a particular policy, if it affects the Singaporean, I will step in. I will not veto. I cannot veto, but I can issue a warning. And if, let's say, they don't agree with the warning that I've issued, it will be reflected later on at the general election. But as I can see it now, I must, as the president election, we must stay clear of all this day-to-day politics, or else we're going to confuse the Singaporeans.
Can I make one comment, and that is, I'm particularly disturbed by Mr. Tan Kin Lian's comment that the concerns of Singaporeans are not fully voiced in Parliament. Our 87 members of Parliament elected during the May general elections are elected by the whole of Singapore in 87 constituencies, 81 for the PAP, 6 for the Workers' Party. The members of Parliament are the elected representatives of the people of Singapore. They voice the concerns of Singapore, they make legislation, they change legislation to say that the 87 members of Parliament, both on the government and the opposition side, do not reflect the concerns of Singaporeans adequately. I think it's a show of disrespect to Parliament and is, in my view, very, very wrong. We have to respect Parliament, which is the foremost and the top legislative body in Singapore. The President has an entirely different role, and one must not confuse the role of the President with the role of Parliament. The President exercises his authority, but Parliament makes the laws. The government sets the policy, and this policy is debated in Parliament. And I think the situation is very clear. One must give respect to the proper organs of government, otherwise there will be confusion.
I wonder if I could ask Mr. Tan Ji say on whether you agree that you could also be possibly running for the wrong office, and the right venue for what you're championing might well be the general elections too.
Well, I think the direct answer to you is that the President, well, though Dr. Tony Tan, I will try to marry the two and see whether we can come out with a compromise or an answer to you. Dr. Tony Tan said it's a moral power. The President has got moral power. Mr. Tan Kin Lian said that, well, he would like to reflect the concern of the people. So you think the moral obligation of the President to articulate, to be a voice of the people, I think that's where I find the common ground between the two. It doesn't mean that you have to. You can show respect for Parliament in ways like showing empathy for the problems of the people. And that's what the President should do, like the Queen of England occasionally would show empathy. The Prince Charles, Prince whatever, always, the Princess always shows empathy. The President must be a source of empathy. And he doesn't have to speak in strong terms. But occasionally, Prince Charles would also use strong words as well. But these are exceptions. But by and large, I would see the President as a center of moral power, who must be a source of empathy for the problems that the people face. We are the most stressed society in the world, and the most stressed, where the workers are the most stressed in a survey of 14 countries. Don't Singaporean workers deserve empathy from somebody high up that say, Charm, I know you work hard, long hours, you know, there is a future for you. Don't worry. The good days will come. Work hard, and you will see the fruits of your labor. The empathy, well, we will take care. I will tell the Prime Minister your concern. What's wrong with that? What's wrong with the President saying that to the people? He has the moral obligation. If he is doing justice, if he is to do justice to his claim to have moral power, then he must empathize with the people.
I will allow one response from each of you on this, because I think this is a very critical issue in this election, which is the role of the President with regards to the Constitution and his duties to the people. Yes.
I think just one clarification to what Mr. Tanji has just said. Prince Charles is not a head of state of Britain. He can say what he likes, and sometimes he says very controversial things. The Queen is the constitutional head of state of Britain, and she is very careful in what she says. When she delivers the Queen's speech in Parliament, it is her speech, it is her government. She appoints the ministers. She cannot be against her own ministers who serve on her behalf, and she is extremely careful about what she says. Otherwise, there is no government. The President is the head of state of Singapore. He has to be circumscribed in what he says. He cannot contradict government policy, because otherwise, where is the constitutional authority to govern Singapore? If you are independent, royal, Prince Charles,